Picture this. So you're in a room alone. There's nobody there but you and your best friend. And your best friend kind of leans into you a little bit and asks, "So how's your job going?" What one word, if you only had one word to fill in the end of this sentence, what one word would you put there? Work is what? I heard some giggles. That was good. So over the last 3 weeks, I've been conducting a very unscientific poll. And I've been asking people on Facebook and Instagram and LinkedIn and Twitter that same question. What one word would you put in there? And it's been really interesting, the results, because about half of the people have been responding on social media saying words like amazing and unbeatable. You know, it's like life is great. And about the other half are responding with words like it's grueling and it's stressful. So it's about 50-50. But those are the public results. Now, I also told people that they could instant message me, or they could, direct message me, or they could email me and to give me their response. So how do you think that the results were different? So as people began to message me, it was 98% negative emotions. And so people were saying things like, work is actually, it's really confusing, or it's chaotic, or even somebody said it's crushing. They used the word soul crushing, right? But the number one word, and it's almost not a negative word or a positive word, it's almost like a question. It's like, work is crazy, right? Have you ever experienced that? Work is just crazy. Like a friend of mine who wrote to me, she said, when I woke up this morning, I picked up my cell phone and I looked at it, and I had 150 unread email messages. So I hustled around, I got myself ready, I drove myself to work, I opened up my laptop, I now had 200 unread email messages. So today, I've just been crushing it. I've been working all day, I've really been after this thing, and so it's the end of the day, and I now have 300 unread email messages. You ever have those days? Or this friend of mine who wrote me in, and she said, right now, I'm in a meeting, and the purpose of the meeting is to figure out what kind of meetings we need. Yeah, that. And then she said, but I've taken down several to-dos, but guess what? I don't have any time to do that because I have another meeting to go to, right? Work is crazy. This is crazy, this thing that we do. And it makes me wonder, why do we do it, right? Why do we work? So, by show of hands, how many of you you would like to, sometime in the next, few years, earn money? Would that be okay with you? How many of you? I see those hands. Good, yeah. All right, that's good. How many of you find it necessary from time to time to spend money? You ever? Yes. Okay, I see all the hands. Okay, that's good. So here's one more question, though. How many of you would like to live a meaningful life? Yeah, I see somebody back there with 2 hands up. They're going to live 2 meaningful lives. So, here's the question, though. It's like they used to say on Sesame Street, which one of these is not like the others? Right? It's almost like, we even have a phrase for it. It's work-life balance. As if work is this thing we do over here, and life is where all this meaningful stuff happens over here. But it doesn't work that way. The way we spend time is the way we spend our life. The way you spend time is the way you spend your life. Now, there was a recent survey that came out that showed that for working Americans, on an average weekday, they sleep about 36% of the time, or personal grooming, and they work or have work-related activities about 37% of the time, which means 2/3 of our weekdays are made up of either sleeping or we're at work. So the way we spend our time, the way you spend your time, is the way you spend your life. And so if we want to live a meaningful life, we have to find a way to bring meaning to this part of our life. So over the last 2 years, I've been interviewing hundreds of people who have been both making money, but they are doing it and finding meaning. They make $1 and they make a difference. And so these are people just like you. In fact, today I'm going to talk about 4 people who are just like you. They started while they were still in college. And they're taking on some of the biggest problems on the planet. And they're doing it with tools that are available on every job in the world. All right. So here's the first big problem that we're going to talk about. Now, I've been given 15 minutes to stand up here and to talk to you about meaning at work. And during that 15 minutes, somewhere around the world, 22 children under the age of 5 are going to die from a simple disease, diarrhea, that is preventable and a curable condition. And so when we hear things like that, it's like our brains want to shut down. We want to say, that's too much, I can't do anything about that. But I'd like you to meet Gayatri Datar. Now, she was a student at Stanford University, and she took a class called Design for Extreme Affordability. Now, in this class, they designed solutions for the poorest people in the world. But you can't design a solution for a problem you don't understand. And so you can't design a solution in a lab at Stanford University. So Gayatri and her classmates, they traveled to Rwanda. Now, Gayatri stayed with a woman, her husband, and their 9 children in one room. And she lived a day in their life. When they cooked, she cooked. When they ate, she ate. When they took care of the children, she took care of the children. And in fact, she didn't just live one day in life, she lived 30 days. She stayed with this family for 30 days to truly understand what was going on in these families. And one of the things that was really obvious right away was dirt floors. Now, when you have 9 children running around, and some of them are very young, when the youngest child relieves themselves, it just goes onto the dirt floor. And you cannot get a Bounty Quicker picker-upper and go mop that up. It doesn't work that way. And when you're cooking on a stove and there's dirt floors, and you drop something off of the stove, there is no 5-second rule here, folks. You do not pick that up and put it in your mouth. It just doesn't happen. But what happens is that stuff becomes a source of pathogens and parasites, and it becomes a cause of diarrhea. So when Gayatri and her classmates, when they returned to Stanford University, they did some research, and they found a study from Mexico where they replaced dirt floors with concrete floors, and they reduced the incidence of diarrhea by 49% and parasites by 78%. But this was Rwanda and not Mexico. So they needed a less expensive solution than even a concrete floor. And here's what they came up with. They found an old technology, an ancient technology called earthen floors. And on earthen floors, you just put down aggregate and then sand and then clay, and then you seal all of that with an oil, and it's equal to a concrete floor in reducing the incidence of diarrhea. So Gayatri started a business. She moved to Rwanda, she started a business, and today her business is called Earth Enable. And today they have installed over 500,000 square feet of flooring. They have 8,000 customers. They employ 80 people. But what's the impact of that? How do they know that they're making an impact? By the way, hang on to that word, impact. I really like that word. We'll come back to it. So here's their impact. So 61% of their customers say in the first 30 days, they have improved health already, and 19% say they've already saved money on health care in the first 30 days. So Gayatri and her team, they make an impact by what they sell and how they sell it, to whom they sell it. So here's the second big problem we're going to talk about. 1 in 3. So 1 in 3 women in their lifetime will experience sexual or physical violence. And Joy McBreen from Woodbury, Minnesota, she's no exception. She was 17 years old when she experienced sexual violence. So when she entered the University of Minnesota, she had a burning passion. She knew exactly what she wanted to do. She wanted to end violence against women around the world. The only problem was she had no idea how to do that. So she asked. And as part of her coursework, she traveled around the world and she met with women's groups. And she said, what do you need? What would it take for you to escape from violence? And the answer surprised her. What they told her was, we need jobs. So she didn't understand that at first, and so they explained, when we have a way to make a livelihood, we become respected members of the community. We have self-dignity. We become partners in our relationship, and the level of violence goes down, and the research backs this up. So Joy started a business, and her business is called Faranita. And she buys jewelry and other items from women in these women's groups where domestic violence and other forms of violence against women are highest, and she is helping them to lift themselves out of poverty, and as a result, they are able to escape from violence. Today, she employs over 8,000 people in 16 countries. She has an impact by what she sources and how she sources it. Now, I'm going to confuse you with the number here because the first number I want to tell you is 354,000. 354,000 in the United States are homeless every night. So why do I have the number 354 here? The number 354 represents the number of people who are experiencing homelessness in Durham County within walking distance of this auditorium today. When Julius Ibrahim was a student at a university in London, Julius would walk out of his door and he would find people who were doing what he calls rough sleeping. That's what they call it in the UK, rough sleeping. Here in the United States, we'd say they're experiencing homelessness. And so Julius got to know his homeless neighbors. And he asked them, what do you need? How can I help? And what he learned from them, he told me, through research and through meeting his homeless neighbors, he found out that almost all people, most people on average, are only 2 paychecks away from being homeless themselves. And so that gave him so much empathy, he had to do something, so he opened Second Shot Coffee. And Second Shot Coffee, he trains and employs homeless people to become baristas. And then he helps them to get back in the rhythm of work. And as they get into work, then they begin to save money, and when they save money, then they get out on their own, and finally he helps them to find a better job than being a barista. So Julius is making an impact through how he staffs his company. Now, I don't know about you, but when I travel, one more thing before we go to the next slide here. When I travel, it sort of changes my perspective. Do you find that? That it breaks your bubble of reality when you travel somewhere, especially when you travel to another country. And that was the case for the next 2 guys. But let me give you this statistic before I tell you who they are. Let me hopefully give you the statistic. There they are. All right, it is 66 million. 66 million primary school-aged children are going to school hungry in the developing world. And when you go to school hungry, it impacts your health. When it impacts your health, it impacts your ability to learn. When it impacts your ability to learn, it impacts your ability to make a livelihood, which traps another generation in poverty. And so, meet these 2 guys. So the guy in the back is Matt Moreau, and the guy in the front is Corey Chillibeck. When Matt was a freshman in college, he traveled with his parents. His parents did a medical mission in Latin America, and it was the first time he had seen this, of hungry kids going to school and trying to learn. And it really broke his bubble. It shifted his perspective. And Corey, the guy in the front, he went on a base camp hike on Mount Everest in Nepal. Now, he's got, his expensive down jacket and his $200 hiking boot and his expensive GPS watch and his, expensive sunglasses, and he's hiking. Well, Nepal is the third poorest country in the world. And while he was hiking, he met a man who was barefoot, wearing torn clothing, and had a giant wicker basket on his back. And he started talking to the guy, and he said, "So why are you doing this? What's going on?" And the gentleman said, "I'm 73 years old, and I'm paid 25 cents per day to carry this basket from the village up to the base camp and back." And when Corey looked inside of the basket, what he saw was cans and cans of cola that were being sold to the hikers further up the trail. And it broke his bubble. It changed his perspective. And so what Corey did was he went back. He was a student at the University of Alberta, and he asked himself, what do I have in my hand? I am a poor student. What can I do about this? So Corey noticed that 3 times a day he's reaching in his pocket and he's pulling out $1.75 and he's buying bottled water. So the idea came to him, and he got with Matt, and they approached a bottler, and they said, "Could you put a label on this, private label some water for us, and could we sell that water?" And so the bottler agreed. He gave them a few cases of water, and they put a label on it that said Earth Water. And they went out and they sold it out of the back of a van. And they took the net profit and they sent it to the World Food Program. And they thought, this works. So today, Matt and Corey run the Earth Group. And the Earth Group sells Earth Coffee, Earth Tea, and Earth Water. And last year alone, they provided 800,000 meals through the World Food Program. So they make a difference. They make an impact by how they share. Now, some of you are going to go and get a job, and you're going to look at companies that you'd like to work for. So first of all, 3 out of 4 of these companies are hiring right now. And second of all, one of the things you can ask is, before you talk to the company, do some research. What do we sell? What kind of impact is that having? How do we source? How do we staff? And then what do we share? And here's the thing. If you don't find what you're looking for, start what you're looking for. The way you spend your time is the way you spend your life. So here's my challenge to you. Use this one short, amazing life and go make an impact. Thank you.